My ex-wife trashed everything I owned after our divorce, and now she wants me back because her new boyfriend left her with nothing. I, 34M, am still trying to figure out how I ended up here, dealing with a person who seems to have zero concept of respect or decency. My ex-wife, Jenna, 33F, and I were married for 6 years, and somehow, even though we're divorced, she's still finding ways to wreck my life. You think once you sign those papers, you're free, right? But some people can't let go, and she's one of them. When we first met, Jenna was magnetic. She had this big personality, always the center of attention, and honestly, that was part of the attraction. We were both young and ambitious, right out of college, and I thought she'd be a good match, someone who'd push me, challenge me. And she did, but not in the way I expected. At first, I thought she was just intense, maybe even a little high maintenance. Over time, I started to see it wasn't intensity. It was entitlement. It started small. One of the first times I saw it was with a family heirloom, my grandfather's watch. It wasn't valuable in any real sense, no jewels, no fancy brand name. But it meant something to me. Jenna hated it, said it was tacky and didn't match the decor she was going for in our bedroom. At first, she'd just drop hints. Wouldn't this look better stored away? Or we could make the space look so much sleeker without it. I didn't budge. Then she started being blunt. Either that watch goes in the attic, or I'm accidentally misplacing it next time I'm reorganizing. She didn't even pretend to respect that it mattered to me. I stood my ground and kept it in the bedroom, but that was just a taste of things to come. A year or so into the marriage, Jenna's demands started expanding. She got into the habit of inviting her friends over when I had plans with mine, completely hijacking our nights. Like once, I'd set up a game night with a few friends and Jenna knew. I'd told her, even invited her if she wanted to join. Instead, she brought 5 of her own friends, showed up in the middle of the night, and started mocking what we were doing. This is so lame. You guys really need saving. She made such a big scene, like her friends were there to upgrade the night. After that, I started planning things with my friends outside of the house. Jenna complained about me excluding her, but the truth was, it was easier than having her ruin every single night I tried to have with them. She didn't like that either. Somehow, anything that wasn't about her was a problem. Then came the expectations. Every few months, she'd make these lists for me. Actual, written lists of what she thought I should improve about myself. It started as helpful tips, and then morphed into these bullet points. Wake up at 5 a.m. every day to be more productive. Send a text every morning telling me how much I mean to you. Make spontaneous romantic gestures weekly. She always framed it as me becoming my best self. But it wasn't about that. It was just her needing control over every part of my life. I didn't meet her standards, who could? So things just kept escalating. She'd compare me to husbands of her friends, saying I was stuck in the past, not ambitious enough, or not supportive. Once she even said, I feel like I'm married to a guy who peaked in college. That stung, but she wasn't done. She convinced me we needed to upgrade our lifestyle. She wanted a bigger house, a nicer car, vacations we couldn't afford. I tried to reason with her, saying we needed to stay within our means, but she'd just get defensive. You're holding me back. If you had any ambition, you'd want more for us. After years of these arguments, Jenna finally had Herb's solution. She'd been talking to some life coach who'd filled her head with fantasies about manifesting abundance and how she deserved better. So she filed for divorce. Said I was too small-minded and that she needed a partner who could match her vision. The divorce itself was a nightmare, of course. I left her the house, just to get things over with. Moved into a small apartment and thought, finally, I'm free of her madness. I didn't bother taking much with me, just the essentials. I figured we'd work out a way for me to get the rest later. I left things like my guitar, my record collection, a few personal items that didn't seem urgent. About 2 weeks after I'd moved out, I got a call from a friend who lived near our old house. He said he saw movers hauling stuff out of the place and asked if I was moving to a new apartment. I knew Jenna wasn't planning to move, so I called her to ask what was going on. She was casual about it, saying, "Oh, I thought you didn't care about that stuff anymore." I needed space for my own things, so I figured I'd make room. The tone in her voice was like she'd done me a favor, like my stuff was just clutter she'd generously gotten rid of. When I pushed back, she laughed it off, saying I was being a child about pointless clutter. I was furious but felt stuck. Dealing with her, even post-divorce, was like banging my head against a wall. After that, she'd call randomly, still expecting things from me. One time, she tried to convince me I needed to help with her car payments because she was emotionally strained and financially stressed. I told her we'd been legally separated for months, but she came back with, "You supported me financially before. You have a moral duty to help me now." When I refused, she dragged mutual friends into it, saying I'd abandoned her when she was at her lowest. Then came the guilt trips. She started calling herself a work in progress, telling anyone who'd listen that she just needed a little help getting back on her feet. To be clear, she had the house, half my savings, and no kids to support. But she kept playing up this image of the struggling, wronged ex-wife who just needed support from the man she'd been with for so long. A few friends even reached out to me, telling me I was being cold and shouldn't hold grudges. Things went quiet for a few months, but then Jenna reappeared, calling me at odd hours and even showing up at my place. Apparently, her new boyfriend, the one she'd leveled up for, had left her high and dry. Not only had he dumped her, but he'd also convinced her to invest in his startup and then bailed, taking her money with him. She was furious, saying she'd been taken advantage of and that it was all a huge mistake. She tried everything. First, it was apologies. She called crying, saying she'd made a mistake and that she'd lost sight of what mattered. When I stayed silent, she switched tactics, accusing me of being heartless for not helping her when she was struggling. "You were my husband. If you ever loved me, you'd want to see me okay," she'd say. Then, when I still didn't budge, she went back to the classic Jenna, angry, entitled, demanding that I'd do the right thing. One night, she actually showed up at my apartment. She was half drunk, eyes red, and launched into this sob story about how she was at rock bottom and that I was the only person who'd ever truly been there for her. She went from begging to berating me, calling me selfish for refusing to take her back. I told her she needed to leave, that she had no right to come into my life again and make demands. She told me I was destroying her and that I was pushing her to fail. It was like nothing had changed. In her mind, I was still responsible for making everything right. I got her out that night, but she didn't stop. The next day, she started texting, saying I was the only person who could help her get back on her feet and that she needed me. When I didn't respond, she told some of our mutual friends that I'd refused to help her when she was desperate. She painted this whole picture of me as the heartless ex who'd left her out in the cold. Messages started rolling in from friends who'd bought into her sob story, saying I needed to be the bigger person and give her a second chance. One friend even called me, trying to guilt me with, "You don't just throw away 6 years. You owe her at least some support." I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe I was being too harsh. But then I remembered everything she'd put me through. Throwing out my things, belittling me, financially draining me while making it sound like I was the deadweight. It wasn't just the money, or even the stuff, it was the constant manipulation. And now, she was trying to pull me back in with the same tactics. So I made a decision. I went silent, stopped answering her calls, ignored the texts, and told mutual friends to respect my boundaries. I'd done everything I could during our marriage, and I wasn't about to lose myself all over again just because she couldn't handle her own decisions. I told myself that I deserved a shot at a normal life, a life where I didn't have to constantly walk on eggshells around someone who never respected me in the first place. But of course, Jenna didn't just let it go. She started showing up at places she knew I'd be, friends' gatherings, bars I frequented. One night, she showed up at a mutual friend's party. The moment she walked in, I could tell she was in her dramatic mode, holding her head high like she was the one wronged. I kept my distance, trying to enjoy the night with some friends, but eventually, she cornered me. She started off quiet, keeping her voice low so others wouldn't hear. "So this is it," she said. "You're just going to leave me here, struggling?" I stayed calm, didn't even look at her directly. "Jenna, we're done. I'm not responsible for your life anymore." Her voice rose a notch. "After everything I sacrificed for you? I could have had anyone, but I chose to stay with you. I deserve better than being thrown aside like trash." I couldn't help it. I laughed, and that was enough to set her off completely. She went on a rant, loud enough now that people around us started watching. She talked about how she'd wasted her best years with me, how she'd given up so much and deserved a second chance. It was like she was performing, hoping to rally people to her side, to turn them against me. But I didn't bite. I stayed calm, looked her dead in the eyes, and told her, "Jenna, I gave you everything you asked for, and it still wasn't enough. I'm done." That was the end of it for me. But I could tell from her face that she wasn't going to make it easy. I left the party, but she kept texting me all night, sending these long messages about how I was a cold, heartless bastard, and that I'd regret ever walking away from her. I blocked her number the next morning, hoping that would finally be the end of it. Then she started emailing. She sent me these long, rambling messages, alternating between apologizing and blaming me for her problems. She'd go from, "I know I made mistakes, but I thought we were forever," to "You're a spineless coward who couldn't handle a real woman." She even said I was the reason her life was falling apart, like somehow I was still supposed to fix her mistakes. Eventually, I had to block her emails too, and then I even considered getting a restraining order. It was getting that bad. She'd pop up at mutual friends' houses, trying to get them to pass messages along to me, trying to guilt-trip everyone around us. One of my friends finally had enough and told her to stop, saying that her behavior was obsessive and manipulative. It wasn't until a few weeks later that things finally started to calm down. I'd managed to avoid her, cut her off entirely, and started piecing my life back together. I still heard from mutual friends that she was spinning her story, telling people how I'd ruined her and how I was heartless, but at that point I didn't care. I'd been pulled into her mess for too long, and I was done letting her dictate my life. The experience taught me a lot about boundaries, about how much you can give to someone and still have them turn around and expect more. I used to think that relationships meant compromise and sacrifice, but this wasn't a relationship. It was a one-way street where nothing I did was enough, and no amount of patience or support could ever satisfy someone who always felt entitled to more. Jenna tried to break me, and for a long time, I let her take more than I had to give. But I've learned my lesson. I won't be that person again. I won't be pulled back into someone else's chaos just because they can't stand to face the consequences of their own actions. I'm finally free of her, and I'm not looking back. And if there's one thing I know now, it's that some people will never be satisfied, no matter how much you give. But that's their problem, not mine.